You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So, if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your, stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Sarah Baldwin. How attachment and nervous system regulation impact your ability to attract the 5-star man. Hey, ladies, and gents, if you're there, because I know you're secretly listening. Welcome to Life Check Yourself. It is the beginning of 2023, and I cannot think of a better guest to get us started. I have with me today Sarah Baldwin. She is a somatic experiencing practitioner and trauma coach who is trained in polyvagal interventions. We had the father of polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges, on the show a long while ago. So this is super exciting, a total connection. She's actually on the training team at the Polyvagal Institute. She specializes in somatic trauma healing. She does work in a ton of different modalities with attachment, inner child, nervous system regulation, pretty much everything we all need right now. So welcome to the show. I'm happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here with you today.
It's really funny. My dad went to high school with Stephen Porges' brother, Ned.
No, that's so weird. What a small, strange world we live in.
I know. And that's how I got him on the podcast, is that Ned introduced me to I was like, you are like an icon. Like, can you please come on my podcast? So it was just really funny.
That is so funny.
Yeah, networking from someone who went to high school in like 1960. So very cool. All right. So I did a deep dive on you, and I feel like we're a little soul sisters, because what you're doing is like, you are like the DJ mix master of changing behavior. It's like you have this expertise in all these different modalities to create actual, results and change, which is kind of what I'm all about. And I'm wondering if you can just sort of explain why we need to use all these sort of ports of entry to create sustainable, organic from within shifts that then can translate into new behaviors, which create new results in our life.
Well, thank you for that incredibly cool new nickname that I'm going to make a t-shirt of and a bumper sticker of, perhaps, and just maybe a hat too. I don't know. Thank you for that. So yeah, what I really got clear on, certainly in my own healing journey, but in my training, was we really need a holistic approach to healing. And the foundation of everything, in realizing this from being trained in many different somatic modalities, which is really embodied work, is that the foundation of everything is the system that lives within each of us, called our autonomic nervous system. This system, which Stephen came on to talk to your community about, but this system within us, our autonomic nervous system, it is responsible for how we perceive and experience every single thing inside of us and in the world. And so at any given moment, this system is the deciding factor on whether we feel good or not. It is the deciding factor on whether you can step towards the things you want or not, whether we can connect with other people or not, and so on and so forth. So it is so imperative to understand this system within us, which I still think is really strange, that we learn so many things in school, and yet we don't learn about the system that is responsible for how we feel, the sensations in our body, our behaviors, our thoughts, how we perceive ourselves in the world around us. Everything is decided upon by what's happening in the system. So when we have experiences in the past that haven't been resolved, they kind of like go into, think of it this way, like we all have a database of past information, like a computer system within us. And
Right.
It has every single lived experience we've ever had, the good things, the bad things, the dangerous things, and intergenerational things too. And so our autonomic nervous system, as I said, foundation of everything, it has a threat detector, which Stephen coined neuroception. It's in our brainstem. And every millisecond, so seconds fast, millisecond is really fast, millisecond of our entire lives, it's been doing this. Is that safe or dangerous or life-threatening? Is that safe, dangerous, or life-threatening? Is that safe, dangerous, or life-threatening? It's doing it right now for every listener, wherever you are, in your car, at the beach, at the grocery store, your threat detector is doing this. And the way that it decides what is safe, dangerous, or life-threatening is by looking to the receptacle of past information. So in a millisecond, as it looks outside or inside, it then looks to the receptacle. So let's say I'm looking outside my window, there's a beautiful tree. My neuroceptive response looked into the receptacle and said, what do we have on trees? For me, I grew up in the middle of the woods and my home wasn't safe, but the woods was. So when I see a tree, I feel better. And the reason is because neuroception, then it is the deciding factor on whether we feel good or not. Because if it says, I think that's safe, we come into what's called regulation, it's called our ventral vagal complex, but that's where we experience joy, flow, creativity, play, wonder, flowing down the river of life, ease, contentment, intimacy, all the yummy things we want happen in that state. And we only go there if our threat detector says that's safe. Now, for many of us and many listeners, you may be thinking, I don't live in that place a lot where I feel relaxed, at ease, get deep sleep. I feel really good all the time. Relationships are easy for me, and so on and so forth. And that's because our threat detector is looking out into the world and it's seeing a lot of things it thinks are dangerous. For example, let's say you get a boss who says, hey, we need to talk. Guess what the threat detector does? It looks to the receptacle and says, what information do we have on authority figures? Oh, parents. My parents were hypercritical. I was never enough. I always got it wrong. I was on eggshells, or that teacher, etc. And in a millisecond, the threat detector says, that's not safe. And instead of going to that yummy, wonderful place where we feel really good, called our ventral vagal complex, we go to one of 3 states in our autonomic nervous system, where our nervous system essentially is protecting us. In those 3 states, we experience different things, but just to give an overview of that, we might experience things like anxiety, stress, fear, terror, rage, panic, feeling frozen, apathetic, hopeless, depressed, shut down, and any racing thoughts, a flavoring of not good. So what we consider not good is the symptom of our system protecting us. Now, that's really the foundation of really all healing, because it's the reason we become dysregulated long term. When we're actually in safety is because our system doesn't know that the past is over. So from past traumas, our system might be experiencing chronic anxiety, even if we're safe, or we might be feeling depressed, even if we're safe, and so on and so forth. They're stuck in our lives, not able to step towards the things that we want. Now, this is the vehicle inside of our bodies. So that's the foundation because it lives in us. But then when we think about our relationships, and lots of listeners have probably read like the book Attached, or like so many people have read it. Diane Port has a great one called The Power of Attachment I've got on my bookshelf. Now, I'm sure listeners have had this experience. I sure did on my journey, where you learn a lot of information and you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm anxiously attached. It's making sense. Whoa, wow. And you're like, wow, I get it all now. But then what occurs is all of a sudden you get into an argument and all of that learning goes out the window and you're in the same pattern again. And the reason is because how you attach to other people, how we relate to other people, is directly dependent on what's happening in our nervous system. So our nervous system is the one running the show in our relationships. So I'm giving kind of like a long-winded answer, but
no, I'm loving it, because this is really like the answer to like, why does all the stuff I've done not really create change? Because I think Mary Morrissey says, information without action is entertainment.
Yeah, or suffering.
Yeah, right.
Like, for me, it was like, I'm like, I learned so much. It's almost worse to know this, because then I'm aware of something that I can't seem to change.
Yep. Okay, go ahead. I took you off track.
So we've got this vehicle inside of us. We have
Right.
to learn about the vehicle, and then we get in the driver's seat of the vehicle. When I help people regulate our nervous systems, what we're essentially doing is showing our nervous system that we're safe. And because it doesn't think we're safe. If we're dysregulated, it means it doesn't think we're safe. Now, just before I go to relationships, very important to understand that our autonomic nervous system is subcortical, meaning it lives in our bodies. It is not up in our cortical or thinking brain, our neocortex, prefrontal cortex. So this is why, if any listener has ever been anxious, you know this, right? You're anxious, you're like, oh, holy shit, I have to go do that thing. I feel pretty anxious about it. Just calm down, Sarah. There's nothing to worry about. You're fine. You're fine. You're going to go on a date. You're like, there's nothing to worry about. I'm fine. Millions of people go on dates every day. There's nothing to, or I'm going to have this conversation with someone or whatever. And if you've noticed, that rational thinking doesn't usually change what you're feeling. As much as you try, it doesn't change your anxiety. And that is because we're speaking a language, a verbal language that our nervous system can't hear. So it's literally doesn't compute. It can't hear you. It doesn't even know you're talking to it because it doesn't speak that language because it lives in your body. So the language of our bodies is a somatic language, and
right,
not embodied language. We have to, I say a lot, we have to show, not tell our nervous systems that we're safe. And when that happens, it responds. It's like, I don't want to be protecting you all the time. It's a lot of work. Thanks for letting me know we're safe. I can rest and I get to come into regulation. So that's our system. We live inside of it. We want to get in the driver's seat. Now, everything that we approach in life, we use our nervous system. So if we want to look at relationships, we better understand our nervous system. If we want to do parts work, meaning we all have parts within us, we all have young parts within us, we better address our nervous system. If we want to set boundaries, step towards purpose, all of these things require our nervous system. For example, when we look at attachment is completely embodied. It has nothing to do with thinking or a cortical brain. When a child is born, we don't have the ability to self-regulate. And that means that we are completely 100% at the mercy of the adults around us. So we have a nervous system that works, but we can't calm ourselves down. So we can't regulate it ourselves. I need the adults around me. Now, nobody taught our parents how to parent, and their parents how to parent, and some of us had traumatized parents, and so on and so forth. And so if our caregivers, and the studies now say our caregivers needed to be able to attune to us 30% of the time, if they weren't able to do that, we brilliantly adapt. So as a young child, my system is saying, I need the adults around me. Now, let's say I have a caregiver who is anxious all the time and scared. They're dysregulated. So my nervous system is saying, we're in trouble because I need your nervous system to regulate mine, because nervous systems read each other. So a calm nervous system calms another nervous system down. So a calm adult can calm a baby. Now, if the adult's not calm, who's going to calm the baby? Or, for example, another example, let's say the adult is not there. They're neglectful, they're not present. The child says, I'm in trouble because there's nobody here to help. So in that example, what happens is we use our nervous system to help support us in that experience. And our system says, this threat is so big and so painful, almost at the level of life-threatening. I don't want you to have to be with this excruciating pain. So what our nervous system says is, I can put you into this state in your nervous system. It's our most extreme form of self-protection. It's 500 million years old. It's kind of an interesting fact. And all of a sudden we start to shut down. So our system says, you know what? If no one's going to be available for me, I'm not safe. We begin to think of it like a bear going into hibernation. We are removing ourselves, and I call it, in terms of attachment, we go to an island, like an island alone with me. And I learned to disconnect from my needs because they're going to be perpetually unmet. I learned how to do that, to shut down so that I can continue on. For some of us who had caregivers who were like sometimes there, sometimes not, we learned, I got to keep you close. And if I can keep you happy, maybe, and I keep you close and I make sure you're okay, then I will be okay. Because if you're regulated, I will be regulated. And guess what we use to do that? Our nervous system. We use a different state, though, something called our sympathetic nervous system. So I got to do something. This is, maybe you probably have heard referred to as fight or flight. So I need to get you close to me. And I need to, maybe I'll disregard my own needs. I only feel safe if we're close. If there's a fight, I feel dysregulated, like I'm not going to be okay. I need you to keep you close because otherwise I'm not going to be all right. So we are using our nervous system to navigate our relationships completely. So the reason why, if I do attachment work, I first have to teach folks about our nervous system, because otherwise I'm just giving cognitive information about how people attach. Because our nervous system is like the vehicle that we then take into our relationships so we can navigate them differently. And the same goes for our parts. I do parts work. And when, for many of us, or for all of us rather, we all have parts, and maybe some folks have done like inner child work, really it's
Right.
the same thing.
Yep.
At any moment, there is a version of ourselves in our bodies, and it all relates to our nervous system. For example, if someone said to me, like, I got a text from a friend, and they're like, hey, we need to talk, no punctuation, no nothing. Like, what does that even mean? My
Right.
threat detector says, again, what does this remind me of? And maybe it reminds me of being abandoned. I don't know, or that critical caregiver. And all of the sudden, what occurs is neuroception says, oh, that reminds me of when I was 8 years old.
Right.
In that moment, adult Sarah leaves the building. And now it's as if I've time traveled back to that 8-year-old self, meaning she is now in my body. And now I have the language, the tools, the resources I had as a little girl. And I'm going to do the same things, like apologize 10 million times, which is something I probably would have done, or said, hey, are you okay? Are you okay?
Right.
Oh, never mind. I'm not mad about that thing. All things I learned to resource as a child, because a young part of me is in my body. So that's all happening in our nervous system, same place where it's located. And in order to address those parts, we have to, what I do a process called internal co-regulation. So getting my adult self present as my young self is present, kind of like two different nervous systems coming together.
Right.
So anyway, the nervous system regulation is the foundation of it all, because it's how we then orient ourselves to all these other areas that we're wanting to address. And that's why I start with that as the foundation. And then we go to other specific areas of addressing people's traumas and the things they want to heal.
And thank you for that, by the way. That was just like amazing, because it like everyone's here, little cognitive cortical brain is like, oh my God, there's dopamine. I get it. Thank you, Sarah. That was so good. Because it really, I think also we can create a sense of self-compassion, right? With this information, right? Because I think that's what I see happening is people who listen, who read, who go to therapy, who do all these other different modalities, or DIY it. And then they vow, I call it the shelf help system, right? You have a ha-ha, you vow to do it differently the next time. You have a moment, you do it the same, you beat yourself up, you get more information, you vowed, right? And so what happens, I think, if someone is really used to getting what they want and they're high achievers and they can't mind over matter their nervous system, this is really important, because I think it just reminds you that, like, give yourself some grace, because if Sarah's saying those two systems literally aren't speaking, it's like you're hearing Russian. That part of your body is hearing Russian. If that's not your native language, it just sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, or the volume is on mute, or whatever it is. So how do you recommend people use self-compassion in a way that can soothe the nervous system? Like, how can those two things marry so that we can get out of that cycle of beating ourselves up, trying harder, making a vow, failing?
Well, the first thing I just wanted to say about that is what we call our problems, and are our problems, like the relational dynamic, like a relational problem dynamic thing that's not working. Your nervous system is not, no one's nervous system is ever trying to cause them suffering. It is not trying to make problems in your life or in your relationship. And it is also not confused. It is not dysfunctional. There is nothing wrong with you. All that is occurring, if you're finding yourself dysregulated, or if you've got relational dynamics that are problematic for you, which is, again, you become dysregulated or triggered, activated, same thing. All that's happening is your nervous system is saying, I don't think you're safe right now. I don't think you're safe based on past information, data that I have. I have similar data that says this isn't safe. And here's the thing, my love, I love you too much to allow you to be exposed to that kind of pain ever again, because you were at one point, and that was so excruciating for you. It was so overwhelming, so painful. I am not going to let it happen again, because I love you so much. So I'm going to look out for how it might happen again. I'm going to be thinking about all the possibilities, how it might happen again, and I'm going to protect you. every single time that I think something is wrong. That is not a broken system. That is not someone who isn't trying hard enough. That is not someone who's dysfunctional. That is you are perfect. Everyone is perfectly working. And I'm saying that as someone who thought I was just so broken beyond repair. The truth of the matter is, though, this, I think this is maybe important to say. When we're dysregulated, our system is actively working. And so think of it like, I've got a half a gallon of water on my desk.
Okay.
So
Me too. Oh, yours is bigger.
Oh, there's
the
the
same
same
color.
color. That's right. It's a very good, it's like not an ad, everyone, but it's a very hydro flask.
Yeah.
Anyway, to imagine that I held this half a gallon of a hydro flask for like 10 minutes. That's the equivalent of your nervous system protecting you. So being dysregulated for 10 minutes. I'm working to do this. When you're dysregulated, your nervous system is working. It's not just taking a break. It's hard at work. Now, for some of us, we are dysregulated much more than 5 minutes. For example, I was dysregulated for 2 decades, more, 2.5 decades. For some of you, you may be dysregulated Monday through Friday. You may just be dysregulated for days at a time. You may just be dysregulated for weeks, years, decades, and so on and so forth. So to be dysregulated that long, that is the equivalent of me holding up this water bottle for days and weeks and months and years. And if I said to you, hey, I held this water bottle up for 3 years, you'd be like, wow, Sarah's the strongest person in the entire world. And she's persistent and she is devoted and she is strong. I'd probably get some kind of trophy somewhere. I'd be on a book. So here's the thing, everyone. When our nervous system is dysregulated, that's what it's doing. It is working hard. It never gives up. It will not give up on you no matter what. It will even eat your own muscle tissue to keep going, to keep you safe. Not only that, it orchestrates with every organ in your entire body, and it talks to the different organs and it says, hey, everybody, every other system, your immune system, we need, if you're in sympathetic, we need energy to survive. So everybody's going to have to give up energy. Immune system, what can you give up? And it says, I don't care if we get a cold. We're trying to run from a theoretical lion if we're in sympathetic. So here, I'll give you some energy. And your GI tract says, we don't need to digest these berries or whatever you ate, this sandwich. I'll give you this amount of energy and we'll shut down digestion. Your liver says, I can give this amount of energy, and so on and so forth. This is all happening without you having to ask it to happen on your behalf. Like, what a perfectly working system. The result of long-term dysregulation can become health issues because, as I mentioned, if your immune system is compromised for a long time, your gut, your GI tract, so on and so forth. So here's the thing. So dysregulation is like, whenever I see someone who talk to someone who's like, I've been dysregulated for 10 years, I say, wow, you're so incredibly strong. You are so resilient. Because here's the thing about regulation. Regulation, when you feel good, guess what happens? The water bottle gets put down, meaning your system that has been hard at work for you, your nervous system, gets to rest. So if something can work really hard, like if a car can drive, a car can go and park. If a nervous system can be actively working, a nervous system can come into rest. Of course, it just needs to be shown how. So I get a little excited about showing people how much they make sense and how unbroken they are because it's something that so many people are plagued with, which just actually creates more dysregulation. So
well, that's what I was talking about, right? Then you're beating yourself up, then you're adding fuel to the fire. Okay, I want to make sure I ask this question so you can incorporate it into your answer because you're really smart and I bet you can do it. I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm like, this is why it makes perfect sense that so many women who go through relational trauma, like they get a divorce or they get out of a relationship, and then they are single and they're like, actually, they might even be dating, but they're actually afraid to be in another relationship at an unconscious level because they have not had, they're like, oh my God, I'm still like tingly from holding up the water bottle in my last relationship.
That's
Why
right.
the hell would everyone do that? So how can you kind of incorporate that? Like, how can we talk to ourselves? How can we work with that internal system to get the courage to say, I can put the car in park. The car can stay parked and I can keep this sort of sense of calm or whatever it is inside of us and date and be in a new healthy relationship. So people don't get stuck in like putting the water bottle down and being like, I'm not even drinking water anymore.
Yeah. Well, It's a little complicated, but I'm going to try to simplify this.
You're so good at it. I'm sure you will.
So this, where I mentioned before, like all of these modalities are needed. It's like they all come together. So here's what I would say to anyone who has experienced that likely in those previous relationships, likely young parts of us may have been running the show. Meaning, instead of our adult selves being the one who was predominantly present in the relationship, a young part was. And this, by the way, I just want to name is like just so incredibly common in our relationships. Here's why, just to quickly name why that happens and then provide some support. So this happens because the way our threat detector works, neuroception is saying, what does this remind me of? So when you get into a relationship, or even before that, you go on a date with someone, neuroception saying, what does this remind me of? Oh, they looked down at their phone while I was telling them something important. And then they looked back at me. Oh, I feel like they've known them forever. I like them. What does this remind me of? My narcissistic mother. Ooh, I feel like how do I feel like I've known you for whatever, months or years, and I've only known you for a day. Anyway, that's how neuroception works. And so when we get into a relationship with someone, it says, it's always saying, what does this remind me of? So what does a romantic relationship remind us, our system of? Well, think about it this way. It is usually our most important or one of our most important relationships, the person we spend the most time with, the person that we rely on the most, the person that we are intimate with, the person that we count on, the person that becomes our family. And so guess what your neuroceptive response does? It looks to the receptacle and it says, that sounds a lot like family. And so immediately what transpires is now, instead of adult me always showing up in that dynamic, a younger part of me is showing up because it's reminding me of my own childhood experience and my caregivers. And our partners are doing the same thing. That's happening throughout. And so what transpires for so many of us, if we found ourselves dysregulated throughout a relationship or feeling scared, overwhelmed, unsafe, exhausted, like we lost ourselves in the relationship, like it's so confusing, like why did I just keep taking them back? Like why did I do all these things? All of that is a clue that a young part of us has been running the show. And the young parts are what they're looking for is survival. And so for many of us, we may have had relational experiences that were much more about survival than safe love. Like choosing safe love, a lot of us have been in relationships where we may have felt love for the person, but there was a survival component. I'm not going to be okay if I'm not in this, which is why so many of us stay in them longer than we'd like. So then we get out of that. And now that we're not in a relationship, our adult self is showing up more. Why? Because neuroception doesn't have anything to be reminded of. And we're like, oh, I feel like me in my work, with my friends. Like, this is me. So a part of us is saying, I know a lot of people that say, I don't want to get into a relationship because it feels good to be like, I'm back. Like, I'm back. And so then we avoid relationships because of that. Or we avoid relationships because the fear of, if I get into the relationship again, that young part is going to start running the show.
Which is important to note that, like, if the young part of you is dormant, I'll call it that, right? It is still there, right? Because I think that people are like, I'm going to kill that part of me. Like, like I need to, so it's there. So I think it's a healthy concern. So it's like, you need to learn how to then manage that, right? Make friends with that part of yourself.
That's right. Much more than manage. I need to learn to become the primary parent to that young part of me. Because what happens in relational dynamics is us adults do this all the time. We show up in a relationship and all the while, because we haven't come to the aid of our young parts, the young part is looking for our partner to be the parent they never had, to fill in the blank of what our parents couldn't do for us, our caregivers couldn't do for us. And here's the thing, there is no amount of what they do that will ever be enough. They can be a great secondary parent. And that's what I call it. We become the primary parent and our partner is the secondary parent. We, adult us, advocates for the young part to our partner, but we become the primary parent. So, or that's the work of having health in our relationship. So the way the thing we want to first focus on is, and I invite anybody listening to think about this. Think of one moment where you have felt capable and able, really capable and able. It might be, and you can even think of an imaginary thing, like if an elderly person was walking across the street and they fell, what would be your impulse? probably to go help them. You would feel capable in that. You would feel able, safe. Or maybe it's a time in nature where you just felt so connected, so alive. So think of a moment you felt that way. And what I invite folks to do is bring that to life in your body, meaning go back to it as if it's happening now and really bring it alive. Use all of your senses. So see, you can close your eyes, see the images that you see. What do you hear? What do you notice? What do you feel? Notice the sensations in your body, often things like feeling expansive, grounded, big, safe, etc. So that's your adult self. That is the part of you that the young parts need. And so what I want you to then do is think about a couple options. You can think about the last relationship you were in and what happened when an argument occurred. What happened when a fight happened? What did you feel in your body? And I just want you to bring that to life a little bit, not fully, but just a little bit. And I want you to notice the difference. Notice the feelings that you feel. Often things like scared, blank, shut down, panicked, overwhelmed, like I'm not going to be okay. What thoughts come to you? I'm bad, I'm in trouble, I'm not going to be able to do this, and so on and so forth. What sensations? Often feeling panicky, little, and so on and so forth. So what I want you to just see, getting out of our cognitive brain, feel the difference between those two parts of you. That is not the same you. Those are two different parts of you. And so what I want everyone listening, I'm going through this really fast, but this is the concept that I call internal co-regulation. Co-regulation is connecting to another person.
Okay.
Internal co-regulation is connecting my adult self to my young part. So what I want you to do, feel back into the adult self for a minute, that moment you felt at peace, alive, present. It could have been like seeing something in nature or
I'm doing this with you, by the way.
Yeah, please.
Those who are listening, you can't see. I'm like, you're watching on YouTube. I'm like totally doing it. I'm like right there. Okay, carry on. I'm like, I'm doing it. Okay, go ahead.
So feeling into that version of you, that moment, it could have been just a moment where you felt alive, where you felt safe, where you knew I'm going to be okay. I'm anchored, I'm grounded, I'm capable, I'm able. And then what I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, where is that young part of me right now? Where is she, he, they right now? They might be in your chest, like inside of you. It might feel like they're sitting next to you. They might be in the other part of the room. And all I want you to do, if it feels comfortable, a couple options. The first one that I'll give is you can put a hand on your chest, holding that young part of you. So that's one option. So the adult you, I want you to feel what it feels like to hold this young version of you. Just see what it's like to hold them for a minute. If that feels too much, for some folks it might, hold their hand. See what it's like to hold that young part's hand. And so what I want you to feel into is sending a message to that young part of you that you've got them and you're here. You've got them and you're here. And really you can do a full hug I call it a ventral hug. You can do a full hug if you want, but really feel into what it's like to hold them, to let them know I've got you. And then I want you to start dialoguing with them. It's just really simple. So first we have to somatically comfort them and just notice what it's like for this young, and I'm rushing through this, but really take your time. What is it like for this young part to have a safe adult? And then I want you to say two very simple words to them. I know. I know. I know. Because the truth is, more than anyone in the entire universe, you know exactly what it's like to be like them. That's attunement. And it's what the young parts are looking for, safety and attunement, out in the world, in a partner, in friends. And the reason why these parts are so scared to let us step towards dating is because they're saying, I don't want to do that again. And when we don't take care of our young, this is important, when we don't take care of our young parts, our nervous system does, in the form of self-protection or display.
Right.
So what I invite folks to do is, that's just a little bit of internal co-regulation. those young parts need you. And before you even go on to the dating app to do like the swiping, or go on the actual date itself, or even think about, who do I want in my life? Comfort that young part and let them know, hey, I'm going to be in the driver's seat now, not you. This is way too much for you to handle, but I've got this, and I'm going to keep you safe, and I'm going to choose people who are safe. And we continue the more, I mean, this is like a little quick piece of parts work, but the more that we do that, what transpires is now this young part feels safe. And as the result, our nervous system does not come to their aid in the form of you getting dysregulated or not stepping towards the thing. Now I can safely step towards it. But if you're finding like you're avoiding it or you're not stepping towards it, that's just a clue. A young part doesn't feel safe around it. And your nervous system is protecting them and saying, well, Sarah, if you're not going to do it, I'll do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I love this. My mind is just like, because I think that it reminded me of that when I work with people or I hear people talking about like, oh, I've done inner child work. I think that they skip because they're rushing the I know part.
Yeah.
Right. They'll do the like, oh, this is my 7-year-old little, we call it little who's on our campus, but and it's like, oh, I know. And like, I've got you, but they're skipping the I know part. Right. And that validation, that like, that's it's the true self-compassion at the like primal level is what you're kind of talking about. Right. And I really want to just highlight that you should like rewind, listen until you really get that part, because that's like almost like the magic, like that's the key missing link that allows you to transition into I got it. Because it sounds like to me, if you just go, I got you, you're starting already, you're doing that cortical blah, blah, blah thing, right?
That's exactly right. And think of these parts of us, they're real people, not in a dissociative identity way, but they are versions of you. They aren't the same as you. And what these parts need, just like a child, if a child's scared, do they need me saying, okay, I've got you, you're scared, I can see you're scared. Hey, there's nothing to be scared of. Like, absolutely not. Here's what they actually need. They need someone who gets down on their knees on their level so they're not looking above them, and somebody who can attune to their experience. Now, attunement, which a lot of people miss, it all goes back to the nervous system. Attunement is not what you say. That's a part of it. But have you ever had someone say something that was the right words, but it didn't feel good? You know that feeling like, wow, that didn't feel good. Here's what, because they weren't actually attuning. Attuning is this. I have a rope to regulation, meaning I've got us to make sure that we don't get, both get engulfed by this scary thing. I've got a rope to it, but I'm not afraid of your experience. I'm not afraid of your fear. I can go there with you, because I've got a rope to help us out. So attunement is dipping into where someone is in their nervous system. So if someone is feeling sad, and they're feeling shut down or hopeless, that's their dorsal vagal complex. So if someone was feeling that way, my voice would change and my body would change.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say, I know that's really hard. It's so hard. I wouldn't do this. Hey, I really understand what you're saying. That is really hard. That's misattunement.
Right.
It's all about our nervous system. So what our young parts need is autonomic attunement. They need us to feel what they felt. And to those words, I know, they came to me in my own healing journey of doing this work. And I realized those two words say everything, because they're not about the words. It's about the felt sense experience of, I know what your terror is like. I can feel your terror and I know it. And I also am no longer afraid of it. I can help us out. Or I feel your sorrow and sadness, or the feeling like there's no home. I know that. And so now suddenly they're not alone. And when we do this, we actually imprint new childhood experiences. One of my mentors, Peter Levine, says it's never too late to have the childhood we deserve. We can create that. And the result is then our adult relationships completely change, because I've changed the internal relationship. If that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And I when I do this for myself, I just want to share, like when I do that I know part, I usually cry.
Yeah.
Right. Like I usually cry because I think of it like, having raised 3 girls, there's that moment where that's how I try to kind of be with myself, like I would be with them. Right. And when somebody says like, I get that, like, I know how it is. And finally someone understands you, for me, the reaction is like, blah, right. So I know I'm doing it right. Or I like sort of hit the nail on the head when I'm like, wow, like, this part needs to be really seen and comforted. And both those parts need to be present. And so you're brilliant, by the way. So I love this so much. I could talk to you for like 10 hours. I knew it before I even started. So when you're in a moment, so like, let's say someone is on a date, because I've heard this is a good example, I think. They're on a date and a man starts saying really nice things to them. Mm-hmm. Like he's genuine and he's giving them compliments and he's saying nice things to them. So many of the ladies we work with start to look for things that are wrong with them. Like, it's too nice. He's like, there's a lot of words that get used. My 2022 word was like, everybody was gaslighting everybody. Now I feel like everybody's love bombing everybody, like, and it's just these titles to try and like name something. But like, so if you're in a moment, you're like, I'm on this date, I don't want to sabotage, I don't want to start thinking like ruling him out, disconnecting. Is there a hack, or do you go to the restroom and just sort of like do this for yourself? Is there a way to work it in a moment so that you can remain present, or you can continue to be engaged and have your adult self show up?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's important to name that the good things don't feel good at first, not forever, but at first. And that is because they actually have a lot of energy involved in them. Intimacy has a lot of energy involved in it. It's exposure. It's a lot. Letting people come towards us, love, connection, all when our system is not used to it. It's like if I wasn't able to see, and then all of a sudden I was put in Times Square and was able to see, it would be way too much.
Right.
So that is just want to name how common that is. What I would invite folks to do and to set us up for success instead of an unrealistic expectation is, I want you to know that it makes sense that in that moment, your nervous system is going to say, that's too much in the moment. Now, the goal is the more that we do this work, the more we can take it in the moment. But what I always invite in is this. And this includes working with couples that are working on intimacy, is when you leave that date, when you're in your car or later that night, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to the experience. So I want you to imagine that it is happening again. And from that place, I want you to see if you can feel into even 5% of it. And notice, what is it like to receive that? Another way to, and I'm going to explain quickly why I want you to do that. Another thing you can do is imagine if a friend of yours said, oh, I went on a date with this guy and he did all these things. He checked in on me and, I told him that I was reading this book, and then he read the book, and then he said, hey, do you want to talk about the book, or blah, blah, blah. Anything that you would find, like attractive or nice. What the reason that both of those things can work for us to feel into the good experience in those ways is because our threat detector is saying, well, they're not right in front of me. So since they're not right in front of me, maybe I can take this in a little bit more, meaning it's not as threatening because they're not right there. So feeling into it when we're solo after is really, really powerful. Or imagining, what if it was someone else? That can be a roundabout way to feel into it.
I love that idea.
In the moment, what I invite in is first remembering, if you become dysregulated, like you go blank, or you're like, or even things like, oh, they're not attractive anymore, or that's like dumb, or whatever happens, or you become annoyed. All that means is, oh, my nervous system thinks that's dangerous. That's all. Right now, my nervous system is dysregulating because it doesn't think that's safe. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to show, because we have to show our nervous system it's safe, not tell it. So what I invite in the moment is a couple really simple tools. First is orienting. So look around. Orienting means using your environment to bring you back into the here and now. So use all the senses you have access to, sight, smell, touch, sound, and touch something, smell something, see something to show your system, oh, we're here. We're not where you think we are, probably back in my childhood. We're here. Really simple somatic tool. Another thing is, I invite you to really the best that you can, take in the person's face with the intention of showing your nervous system, like I need to tell my nervous system that they are different. So I want you to take in their face and see if you can see kindness in their eyes and kindness in their face.
I love that.
When you can begin to do that, what you're doing is showing your nervous system they're not who you think they are. This is somebody different. And that can help bring us into regulation in the moment. And then the other stuff outside of the physical experience of being together is going to be really helpful too.
Wowza. Amazing. I'm going to tell you all who are listening, like you need to this is when you listen to in the car and then you're like, wait, I can't write down all this amazing stuff, or I don't remember it. You listen to it again, you share it with your friends, you subscribe, you follow. That was my way of saying all that stuff in the middle instead of at the end. This has been so amazing. I really, really do though encourage ladies to really take this in, right? And the thing that can happen is you're like, oh, I want to remember all those words and I'm going to talk about them with my friends and I'm going to sound really smart. And then I'll think I have done something. And what I really want you to do is re-listen to this and try some of these experiences, right? And pick one thing that you can be like, wow, what would it look like to even just acknowledge a part of myself and to start to have that conversation and to know, and to practice self-compassion, and to be in the action of it, not just memorizing all these really fancy science words that Sarah knows, and are also super, super helpful. Again, thank you. Is there if there's sort of one last little wish, like if you could tell your nervous system one thing, if you could tell yourself one thing, your adult part, one thing, what would you tell both of those parts?
To tell our nervous system and to tell our adult self, is that what you mean?
Are the part of us that feels dysregulated, right? The little part, right? That's caught that the nervous system is like, don't touch. I'm guarding her, right? And then your adult self. What would you tell kind of both, all of those things to know, to remember?
What I would invite everyone to begin embodying. So it's not just words, but to embody for the young part. I'm here. I'm here. Because they're the reason that we made it out and we got to where we are now. And I don't think there's a more loving thing that we can do than say, and I'm coming back for you. And I'm going to rescue you from that place that you've been stuck in. I'm coming back for you. And I'm here now. So that's what I would invite us to say to our young parts and to embody for them. They should be the love of your life. And when they become the love of your life, you find the love of your life because you become it to them.
That's amazing. I want to put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I've never said that before, but I think it's really true. When they become the love of your life, you will find the love of your life.
Oh, brilliant. I love it. Sarah, you're amazing. You're lovely. I will say it again. If you're listening to this podcast, go watch it on YouTube. Why not? You can hit pause. You can take notes. You can see my amazing jean jacket and Sarah's really cool necklace that she's wearing. See, I'm trying to create intrigue. Make sure you subscribe, share with your friends. You can find Dating with Dignity on TikTok, where I'm dropping advice every day. Also on Instagram. You can absolutely find Sarah at sarahbaldwincoaching.com. All of her info will be in the show notes. She has like a You Make Sense program. She's got her weight working. She's got a Navigating Your Nervous System program. She's got a wait list right now. So make sure you get your little tushies on there. And whatever you do, life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye, ladies.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWDVIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.